What you know, alibis, welcome to another very special episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi, and I had the absolute honor of interviewing Asheligh Banfield a second time. We talk about everything from her coverage of the LA wildfires in the past week and a half to Diddy, Lori Vallow, and her new podcast, Drop Dead Serious, which will be airing beginning January 23rd. Please go subscribe. I'm going to put the link in the description. The first series is going to be fascinating. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and hopefully we will do this again. Welcome back to the show, Asheligh. It's so good to have you here. You know, my listeners totally enjoyed our conversation before and are very excited you're back and you're closer to that January 23rd launch date for your podcast.
I am. It's exciting. Busy though. Oof.
Very busy. It's called Drop Dead Serious. People can go subscribe now. I'm going to put that link in the description to the website. So go subscribe because it's going to be great.
Thank you for that. That's so sweet of you. I appreciate it.
Well, everything you do is great. So I'm just excited to get more. And your first episodes, if people didn't watch the first episode we did, is kind of a personal one for you. It revolves around Peter Nygard, who you called Uncle Peter and knew as a teenager. And this is a man who has had thousands of victims, a very dangerous sexual predator. And you're interviewing people who knew Peter as well, telling his story.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I chose this to launch the Drop Dead Serious podcast is because it's a story I'm in. And growing up and calling him Uncle Peter and then realizing 40 years later that he's been this prolific sex predator, aka Jeffrey Epstein meets Bill Cosby meets P. Diddy meets Harvey Weinstein. If you were to take all those guys and put them together, Peter's numbers would dwarf theirs. And so it's been a lot to sort of come to terms with looking back in the 80s and as a teenager, young teenager. I met him around 12, 13 years old with my childhood best friend. Because it's her uncle. And so spent that kind of time with him as a kid and then growing up. Always knew he was skeevy. You know, he was kind of a Hugh Hefner ladies' man. But back then, that was a badge of honor, you know?
Right. And not only do you have interviews with people, I mean, you have access to phone calls. You have his little black book. You're bringing a lot to the table with to tell this story as well as you can with what you have. What can we expect? As far as can we expect some shock value in some of these episodes?
I mean, to me, if it shocked me, I think it's going to shock other people. Certainly, knowing that this was Uncle Peter and always looking at him askance because I didn't like his lifestyle. You know, as a kid, I just thought, oh, not a family man, but certainly not knowing that he was violently raping women on a regular basis. To get the access to the vault, right? To get the pictures of these and videos of these like bacchanalian naked, sex parties, and to see the black book and to see the letters between Hefner and him, and then to get the family access and to hear Angela tell everything about his early life, what his parents and what their grandparents told them, and then try to just sort of get some understanding of how someone can be like this and get such a pass, even from his own family and from world leaders and government leaders and city leaders and friends. You know, nobody believed any of the accusations that came out early. And believe me, there were not many accusations because women who accused men of rape, their lives were destroyed. Sometimes still are.
We've got to change that narrative. I mean, we're seeing it so much, even in the Diddy case. I mean, I think this could be one of the biggest celebrity trials of our time.
Yeah, without question. The stories that are emerging, and it's hard because when you have someone like Diddy, and this is going to sound hard to sort of take, but his whole business model was to celebrate being a bad boy. And so he celebrated crime. He celebrated, women being used as objects. He celebrated, just the underbelly of life. That was his business model. And so I think he surrounded himself with a lot of those people. And so some of the people who come out and accuse him, I think, may not be telling the truth. They may want a piece, they may want revenge. I think he probably rubbed a lot of people a wrong way a lot of times. So we have to be so careful with this particular case because it does involve a different element of society that he himself invited into his world.
Yeah, and that's very true, and you think about it, though, I mean, there have been hundreds or, I mean, just so many civil suits filed, and, a lot of the opinion online is these are money grabbers, but you have to consider he's been doing this for decades, and over decades, you can rack up a lot of victims, and so, I always think maybe there's this small percentage of people that are trying to hop on the money train, but a lot of their stories are the same or have the same theme.
And this is why it's difficult, right? I think many of the accusers will be proven in a court of law, and I don't doubt that there will be a lot of truth to it. And then I think you're right. I think there will be those who are looking for revenge. This was a criminal enterprise, oftentimes with Diddy, and the allegations right now suggest that. And there will be those who want to get in on some of the action. You've seen social media clips of guys who put out audio of what they said was rape. That, one guy said, "I'm a security guard and I recorded this at the door. Send me money." And so
Right.
there is that element involved with this particular story, and we have to be very, very vigilant to even more so than usual to vet that and provide a healthy skepticism. Notwithstanding, there will be a lot of victims in this case who will be telling the truth, I believe, as well.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that always amazes me is you have people that were very close to him that knew what was going on. And I always wonder, is it that they just enjoy that lifestyle of being in his inner circle and that's why they didn't tell? Or is it a fear of Diddy? Because there have been allegations Diddy would make things happen if you crossed him. That's one thing that fascinates me too, is how much of that was just compliance and willing to be in that orbit at that price, and how many people literally feared him if they were to blow the whistle or leave his group.
If the allegations against him are true, and let's just start with that premise that it's still an allegation, I think that there would be a lot of people living in an environment that did sort of operate on a power structure and a fear structure, right? Again, the whole business model was based on bad boy crime, guns, drugs, prostitutes, that. So living in that world, I think it would be really hard for a lot of people to tell right from wrong and to sort right from wrong and to realize their place in the right or the wrong. And then there's the bully factor and the fear factor and then the ruination factor. So it's kind of a story we've heard a lot, right? That in the Weinstein case, in the Cosby case, in the Epstein case, there are people who lived in that world, worked in that world, and either chose to turn a blind eye for self-preservation or chose to turn a blind eye because they wanted to stay in that world or chose to turn a blind eye because they were physically, mentally threatened. And by the way, Peter Nygard covers all of those, like the physical threats, the mental threats, the financial threats. There was you just live in a world of abuse, sometimes without even knowing it.
Right. And yeah, that's very true. And then you have these young and very vulnerable artists that are going under Diddy, which is a huge thing back in the day when he was at the top of his game, and not knowing that they were really signing a contract with essentially a big predator, or allegedly a predator. It's a very sad story. So many victims. We may never know how many.
There's another element to that as well, as you say that, because some people will say, well, you were money grubbing and you signed with a guy that you knew was dangerous and was abusing you because you just wanted a career. It's not that simple. In a lot of these cases, it could also mean you're finished forever. You're going to be blackballed. You'll be ruined. It's not just that you're, not going to get a career with Diddy. It's that you're never going to work in the, in the industry that's your chosen field as an artist. It's a little hard to find another job. So there's a double-edged sword there, right? And I'm mindful when people are critical of people who put up with a lot in order to continue plying their trade or staying in their career. Sometimes it can mean danger, death, and a ruination as well.
Yeah, it's going to be such an interesting one to watch. I'm surprised he is still planning on taking this to trial sooner than later. I figured maybe he would waive his right to a speedy trial and but I think he's ready to go. And my big thing is I'm curious to see, are we going to see any more big name indictments? Time will tell, but there were a lot of very famous people in his orbit. And, I don't do rumor and speculation, but there are names out there of people that have allegedly been in that orbit that are names we all know. Time will tell, but switching gears, over the last week and a half, you've gone from true crime reporting to live reporting these terrible, devastating wildfires out in California. What's that been like to switch gears for you?
For me, it's like riding a bike because I've done, live news and breaking news coverage all my life. True crime has been a huge part of my 37, 38. I can't remember how many years now. But certainly being on an anchor desk and doing breaking news, 9/11, the wars, well, you count them in all different states east of the Carpathians. And so I'm very familiar with the breaking news format, and for me, it's like the easiest thing in the world, right? Most people, it's terrifying, but I think it's just the easiest thing in the world. So that kicked in pretty quickly for wildfires, and so we just went rolling coverage for, hours upon hours and night after night. I'll tell you what, sometimes you don't even need to talk, right? The pictures tell the story, and I think with the wildfires, that was a big part of it. Just the awe and the horror of what was unfolding in front of our live cameras' eyes was pretty devastating stuff.
I agree, but you did a great job. My Grammy and I were glued to your coverage every night, just watching, the human interest stories, the devastation, and but there was one young man that you had on your podcast, and his name was Royal Ramey, a former inmate who did the fire program, which has been in place in California since 1940s, where inmates who are incarcerated can get training to become firefighters, which he did. And I think currently there are over 900 inmates who are currently incarcerated fighting these fires. And I think that, especially with us covering true crime, it's such a good reminder that there is reform in prison for these inmates that choose to go that route. And I just love the fact that this man, who obviously was incarcerated for taking away from society, came out and is now giving back. And for me, it was just such a heartwarming interview you did with him. You could see the pure joy on his face doing what he loved. But just that reminder that not all hope is lost when somebody gets a sentence in prison. I'm really so glad that you brought him on. I've heard so many people say that listening to him was the most heartwarming thing ever. And it's just a good reminder that not everybody who commits crimes comes out and goes right back.
It was a real highlight, not going to lie. Seeing Royal talk about himself as having gone from zero to hero, I just melted while interviewing him. And there he was wearing his his chief's badge. He's in uniform with the chief. It does tell you that the kind of work that firefighting allows you to do, it also welcomes a lot of worship and hero worship. So coming out of a situation where you've been incarcerated and having people admire you,
Yeah.
and celebrate you and thank you, I think it's a full turnaround opportunity for a lot of these guys. Royal himself said it, like, you can't, it's like a drug, all of a sudden you're doing this hard work that you can do and you've been trained to do. And society suddenly loves you again. You were thrown away as trash, and suddenly you're the top of the heap again. So I think it's a really good program. And I think, if you wanted to look at the numbers, I can't imagine a better profession to work in while you're incarcerated, to draw down your sentence, and then to come out with something where you can be a really valuable member and celebrated member of society.
Yeah, and we all know how hard it is sometimes for people who have been convicted to come out and get any kind of job, but to get a job where you have a chance to be a hero, it's just amazing. And my
There's
son
almost
is
no other, right? Like, I can't think
right.
of a whole lot of other
Yeah,
professions where suddenly it's visible. Like, you've got that jacket, and everyone's clapping for you and handing you free meals and thanking you and crying and telling you that you've saved their lives and saved their homes and they'll be forever indebted. I mean, imagine having been, virtually spit on by society when you've been thrown into the slammer for for what you've invited upon yourself. To make that turnaround, I think we should all be very mindful of this program and very supportive of it.
Yeah, my son has his firefighter 1 and 2, and he turns 18 in April, and he is just raring to go. He said, if I were 18, I'd be out there." It is
Wow.
a unique profession full of just the best men and women in this country, and they've had their work cut out for them. But yeah, I wanted to highlight the fact that you have just had the most amazing coverage, and I'm so glad that we were able to tune in and learn more about not only the fires, but also the humans behind the fires that have lost so much. There's been such a tone online of, oh, it's just rich people in the Palisades in Malibu. And even with that, that doesn't make them exempt from
Right.
being devastated. They lost everything. I really sometimes think that the online world can be a toxic cesspool, but
It's
um,
their first thought, right? Like a lot of times online, it's your first thought. And before we had the opportunity to just type it and send it out, we would have to sound it out in a real room, and we'd realize, oh, that doesn't sound right. And then you'd have your own
Yeah.
self edit, your own self vetting, and you'd revise your opinions usually, or at least you not echo them to tens of thousands of people.
Right.
That point about it's just rich people. There are thousands of apartment dwellers, firefighters who've lost their homes. Like there are so many people who can barely make ends meet, who not only lost their homes, they lost their business as well. Like the business burned down and the home burned down and their kids' homes burned down. So that's not a fair judgment. Yes, a lot of multi-million dollar homes burned down. But our Brian Enton went on a tour with Mel Gibson through his ashes of his, like literally Mel walked him through the rubble. And I started to feel a little differently about Mel's conspiracy theories earlier this week. I thought, oh, Mel, what are you doing? Throwing all that crap out there like this was intentional, possibly, and who knows? And maybe they're trying to wipe us all out so they can put up affordable housing. And, these were really right wing talking points. And but then suddenly there was Mel being so human and so wounded and not acting. And he was really positive about everyone else being in a worse boat than he. Yet he's like breaking off a piece of his charred car and saying, "God, I can't believe I can just break it off." So,
Yeah.
we should celebrate what America is, right? You can be the best of the best. You can do anything. You can earn it. You can do it. But when you do it, you shouldn't be ostracized or castigated or derided for having been successful. We should be celebrating people no matter what. If they make accomplishments, if they're down in the dumps, we are all down in the dumps, right? It's a bad
Yeah.
thing to say. Just because you've done well, you don't deserve any sympathy.
Yeah, I've had to practice a lot of self-control online this week when I see those comments, because at the end of the day, they're human. They have memories in that house. They may have had photos of their family, their father, their mother. I really do hate that side of the
Kids
online
lost their
world.
homes. Kids
Right.
lost their schools. Like, come
Yeah.
on. Who cares if they
Yeah.
wear weird vines? I mean, their loss is loss. Pain is pain. And yes,
It is.
the wealthier people will likely get back on their feet better. Doesn't discount the loss of the school photos and the awards that you won as a 7-year-old.
Yeah, and a lot of people, like you say, just average working Joes that live in apartment complexes that lost everything. I saw one special where a family of 17 living in one hotel room, but also at the same time, communities have come together to give basic supplies. And so, you have to focus on the good in the human condition. Otherwise, it just it looks bad when you just read all
Right.
the
Think about
negative people. But
what would
um,
we do? Think about what would we do if you lost your entire home in a fire, right? Everything. Your whole focus would be to getting your kids fed, clothed, rehoused, getting over the trauma of it. Like that would be your every moment of every day. And what are a lot of these people doing instead? They're going over and they're serving food to
yeah,
other people who've lost everything. I have heard
right.
more stories about people who lost everything, and that's how they're spending their busy time right now,
Yep.
serving others. Like, God, like the firefighters that
Yeah.
are doing that. So there's a
Yeah.
lot to be celebrated out there.
Yeah, and that's the story, like Mr. Rogers said, you look for the helpers in these situations, and that statement by him has always stuck with me in these situations. You look for the people that are out doing the good, and there are plenty more than the bad, and I think that's what we should focus on.
But
Um,
holy cow, the bad. Ugh, when I think about people who, you know, plan their looting strategy and, travel and, oh, I just,
yeah, it's the bottom of the barrel. It
it's
really
the,
is just
it's
you
the
can't think of
bottom.
worse people in a situation like this to do that, but
And I
hopefully,
say throw the book at them. I'm all for it. Like usually I'm pretty sober minded, but
mhm,
if you have had the time to think this out, plan out your vehicle, get in your vehicle, travel, somehow sneak past barriers or hike past so that you can go rooting through people's things who are in the worst situation that they've ever been in their lives. I say third strike, fine. Put them away without bail, fine. Like I just say, to hell
yeah.
with you. I have no sympathy for you.
Yeah, and even one person I saw dressed as a firefighter to go loot. I mean, he
Yeah.
was caught, but that goes to show you just, can't go any lower than that. But
And
the
the
good
ones
news.
who are the ones who were caught for arson, the ones who are starting fires, again, it's terrible.
Yeah,
I would look more into those cases because some of them are homeless and I think mentally disturbed, and I'm not so sure they understand the extent of what they're doing. Or the mens rea is there, like the looters, you know exactly what they're doing, and you know exactly why they're there, and you know exactly how much thought and planning they put into what they were doing. I would be more interested to hear the stories before passing judgment on the arsonists. Although, dear God, imagine if anybody is now found to have been an arsonist causing this much catastrophic damage. It's a
yeah.
whole other story.
Yeah, because the death toll is only climbing, unfortunately, and that's gonna be on them if it ever is deemed to be arson.
Right.
But,
Felony murder.
switching gears, Lori Vallow, she had her status conference where she acted as her own attorney. What did you think
Woof,
about that?
woof. First of all, I had to pick my jaw up off the floor. Shocking. She actually did surprise me that she'd done a ton of homework. And what surprised me perhaps the most was that there was no bananas stuff. There was no talk of zombies and hereafter and everything else. So my spidey senses wonder if she's been this clever all along and was putting on the show about the zombies and all the rest and simply used that to escape the real crime, which was, these kids are in the way and I want to marry this guy and live in Hawaii. And I'll start speaking in tongues if that gets me off a murder charge. I don't know. I know
Yeah.
that you can come in and out of psychosis. I know that you can be made competent. You can be competent one day and incompetent the next, and vice versa. So I want to be open-minded about it, but seeing how lucid she was and how studied she was and on point she was, certainly brought that to mind for me. Like, wow, maybe you switch hats quicker and more efficiently than anyone else I know.
And that would be very Lori Vallow. One thing that's always stuck out to me is when I was at her trial and the day they were going to show the autopsy photos of JJ and Tylee, she did not want to be there and asked to go back to the jail. And the judge said, no, you have to stay. And we noticed this was right after lunch. We noticed they take her in the back, bunch of deputies go back. It's maybe 20 minutes and she comes back out, but later fell asleep as these photos are being shown. And to me, that was a big revelation that if she truly believed these kids were zombies and she did the world a favor, why would it be hard for her to look at her two kids? If she's that deep into that, she didn't want to see it. When she came out, eyes were red, looked like she had been crying. And for me, that was a big moment of she doesn't want to look at that because she knows what happened to those kids. She knows her role. That right there that happened at her trial was probably one of the biggest eye-opening things for me.
Yeah, and it brings to mind a lot of questions, right? Look, she's a conspirator, so was it easier for her to just tick the box and say, "Okay, Chad, go ahead and do it," um, or was she more willfully blind than that, saying, "I don't want to talk about it. You deal with it. I don't want to talk about it." I don't know. I don't know which scenario played out. I don't necessarily believe that she was in there, choking the kids, but who knows, right? Because she's
Yeah,
extraordinarily devious.
right.
And I don't know how mentally sick she might have been, just to the point that we were talking about before. Was she so incredibly mentally sick at that time that this truly was a gift to the world? Like Andrea Yates, we're a lot more forgiving and charitable to Andrea Yates than we are to Lori Vallow. But again, I think Vallow's behaviors all the way through her life don't lend the same charitable, default.
Right. And you can go way back to the custody battle with Joe Ryan of how devious she can be and deceptive and really was able to pull the wool over the court eyes many times in that. And to me, I think that it started way earlier than Chad Daybell, but just very interesting. I thought what was interesting to me too is what she filed for in her motions were really things that had nothing to do with Charles's murder. She wanted to see what all the different agencies were saying about her in their email chains, and then also about her extradition. Both of those were denied. But for me, I almost feel like Lori loves the limelight, and I think this is her last shot. She's
Could
got
be.
this trial. She's got this trial. She's got Brandon Boudreaux's after that for his conspiracy to commit murder. But for a lot of me wonders, is this really just her moment to be in front of the camera and show that I'm smarter than what you think? It's going to be a very interesting trial to watch unfold. I'll be
It's
out there for
possible.
that one.
I bet. Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah.
The two things there. Yes, it could be very much so that she's stuck in prison for life. So this is a fun, field trip. And yes, she loves the limelight and wants to look smart and pretty. And so here's her opportunity. As far as her filings go, I'm wondering if it could be one of two things. One, she wants to hear what everyone's saying about her because she wants to know. And two, she's taking a page out of Karen Reed's trial, where if she can find derogatory comments and behaviors, maybe she can use it in her trial, to sway the jurors one way, ask for a mistrial, whatever it is, because a mistrial for her is, yay, I get to do this all over again.
Hmm. Yeah, and rumor has it she hates being in Arizona, so maybe, she just wants to get this over with and get back to Idaho where her lover boy is. She did have her hair tie wedding band on at the last hearing too, and they're going to refer to her as Lori Daybell, formerly known as Lori Vallow, at her request. So still all in. Did you happen to hear the voicemail that Chad Daybell sent Colby Ryan after Lori was arrested, just wanting to talk?
Did not.
Oh, I will send you the link. It's on Colby Ryan's YouTube channel.
Ooh.
He played it for his
Ooh.
listeners. Now, this is after Lori's arrested.
I'm
Kids
writing
are
it down.
missing. Colby had made his public plea to his mother at that point, and Chad noticed in that video he had on a Kansas City Chiefs jersey, a Patrick Mahomes jersey, and it is the most casual. Hey, I noticed you like sports. My kids weren't into sports. I'd love to talk to you, connect with you. I'll have to send you that. It is so brazen.
What's the timing on this again? Chad sends a voicemail to Colby at the time the kids are just missing, and Colby's gone out and done an appeal.
Right. So Lori at this point had been arrested in Hawaii, taken back to Idaho. And while Chad is still free and Lori is in Idaho, I'm not sure of the exact date, but I do know kids still missing, mom's in jail, and Chad just calls Colby and just wants to chit chat, makes it known my kids weren't athletic, so maybe we can talk about football. And yeah, I'll have to send that to you. It is very chilling to hear, but
Ooh.
also so tone deaf. Colby's siblings are missing, and Chad just
Yeah.
wants to get close.
Mom's arrested.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
was this just released, or did it just sort of fall into a big pile of discovery?
No, Colby has a YouTube channel where he he actually released an interview with his mother where she gives her side of what happened. So it's on that same channel, and it was one episode he did where the title was Chad Daybell sent me a voicemail, and he plays it. I will get that to you so you can listen for yourself.
Well, the court never knew about that. Like, I think that should have been something that it would have been part of the trial.
It was never brought up at Chad's trial, which is interesting. But yeah, just hey, your mom's in jail, your siblings are missing, your stepdad's been shot and killed, but let's bond over the Chiefs.
Let's talk sports. That's shocking that if Colby had that recording, that he didn't let the police know about it, because that should have been part of the trial.
Yeah, it was very chilling to listen to. The one trial, well, actually, yesterday, you on your show, you played the body cam video of Mackenzie Shirilla. Is that how you say it? Mackenzie Shirilla?
Mackenzie Shirilla, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she intentionally crashed her car going, I believe, 100 miles an hour. She was charged with double murder, and her concern on that as she's getting arrested is, "Don't break my bracelet."
Yeah, well, they're switching off cuffs. You know, this is a cool little nugget. Every cop has his or her own cuffs, right? So when you cuff a caller and you take them to jail, you got to get your cuffs back. So a lot of times you'll see switching of cuffs during arrests, right? Especially if you're going to put someone in someone else's cruiser, you'll oftentimes switch your cuffs off for someone else's cuffs. And so in one of these switcheroos of cuffs, Mackenzie is concerned as they're uncuffing her and putting the new cuffs on. Don't break that bracelet. And, well, am I going to get my jewelry as she's being taken to the jail? And the
Right.
officer, informs her, no, you don't get jewelry in jail.
And that was the hardest she cried in that whole body cam video, was
Yeah.
when she found out she wasn't getting her jewelry.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to pass too much judgment. I don't know if it finally sunk in that no, you have zero rights. I was fascinated to watch her in the back of the cruiser. It's this silent ride where she's cuffed. They've arrested her. They're taking her to the jail, and you could just see these emotions coming across her face in bits and pieces. And I think it hasn't all sunk in yet, but it's starting to. And then
Mhm.
certainly when the cuffs were part of the equation, I think it really did sink in. The video that we aired after that was the one that really took me off the air actually for a hot minute. And that was the police officer and the chaplain informing Dominic's mom, her boyfriend's mom, that her son hadn't survived the night that he was deceased. And just seeing that reaction, um, it was just a reminder. It's just an instant reminder. And that's what I said on the air last night. It was just an instant reminder of why we have sentencing and why we have punishment and what the punishment's for in a big chunk of punishment, what that's for. And it's from moms like that, who in an instant uh, were terrorized and will be for the rest of their lives.
Couldn't finish watching it. I'm gonna be honest with you as a mother, just, I can't imagine, but when she kinda jumps out of that chair, when it registers, I had to turn it off. It's just, that's just something I couldn't make it through.
Well, it's funny you say that. I was told about the tape, about the body cam, and I said, yeah, I think we should do it. It's important to see the effect of people's crimes. Um, and I hadn't seen it till I was live. And so I
Oh,
watched it live on the air, and suddenly this happens occasionally. I get this lump, and
mhm.
it's these are the choking feeling. We've all had it, and you can't speak, and suddenly, you start fighting back tears. And the tape itself was, I think, over a minute and a half, and I was trying desperately to get myself back together, having, in the middle of watching it, trying to just collect myself. And I couldn't do it. I really struggled. And when we came back, I think I put on as brave a face as I can, but I watched the replay and I like, oh,
Yeah, some of these stories just really get to you, and you're human, you're a mother,
yeah.
I mean, that's our worst fear, is to have an officer come up to our door, and, oh, man, yeah, that really got me
Mm,
last night, but
there'd be no way I could function. I
no,
just
I don't
seeing
think.
the mom, I
Yeah.
barely could function just seeing her.
Yeah. Oh, it's just tragic. And well, so just I'm gonna end this with some random questions because you know me, I'm very ADHD, and so I'm gonna go off. And if you could go back to one historic event to be there, what would it be?
Oh, just one? Oh
Just
gosh.
one.
It's got to be Jesus. I mean, honestly, that's the question that's just so pervasive for this entire planet for so long. What really happened? How much of the Bible that was written so many years later is just recollections and they're not that clear and they're not that true, or I would want to know the time of Christ. I would want to know what everyone was going through. I would want to have seen it for myself and then to know, wow, that sure got legs.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. I'm very petty. I would go to Woodstock. So
Don't get me wrong. That's why I said just one. I'm also
yeah.
a real Civil War buff, so I really would have loved to see. Um, I would have loved to see both the American Revolution and the Civil War. Again, I'm a pious, immigrant in America, so I'm really fascinated with American history. Not as much with Canadian history, with my own
Right.
country. But yeah, there would be several of those.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that would be, that's one place I would love to go to. I'm a little scared to go there though. It's not, as safe as it used to be, but
Going back anyway, at any point, going back in time for women is not safe.
no, I was talking about going there today, but even back then, no.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, in
just go
Egypt, they worship
imagine.
in Egypt, ancient Egypt women were held in high regard, but that was a rarity.
Yeah, it
Um,
was weird. But I think
yeah,
about it like, wow, I'd really love to witness it, but boy, would I ever wanna have my, protective bubble.
right, yeah. Best concert you've ever been to?
First one. Well, no, that's not true. I would have to say the first one, and it's a twofer. The first one was the Police. And the opening for them was XTC in Winnipeg, and I was like maybe 13. And then the really best was U2 in Montreal Olympic Stadium. That was like off the chain. It was great. I was in
Nice.
college at that point, so you're in college and
Yeah,
whatever.
that's 2 good ones. Mine is Pink Floyd at, Clemson.
No.
Yeah, I saw them in '94, my senior year. I
Cool.
skipped school to go get tickets, and, the assistant principal caught me driving out, said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to get Pink Floyd tickets, write me up, suspend me." He
I,
hands me
and
100
did the
bucks.
principal say, "You're good"?
He handed me 100 bucks and said, "Get one for me and my wife." So here I am at Pink Floyd at Clemson, in Death Valley in Clemson, right next to my PE teacher. And he was like, "Everything stays here." I'm like,
He thinks good.
"Kidding me."
Oh my god! Did
So
that
fun.
really happen? He gave you 100 bucks to get me some tickets too?
Oh, totally happened, and I was
Yeah.
next to him and his wife the entire concert, never forget it, and what happened in that stadium stays in that stadium.
Oh,
And last one, favorite band or singer?
so it's kind of weird. Chris Martin. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
just love Coldplay. There's something about
yeah,
Coldplay that speaks to me, and every song is just like, "Ooh, I love this one. Ooh, this one might be the best." And then the politically incorrect answer is Michael Jackson, because
mhm.
that music also speaks to me and has spoken to me in every era of my life. And now it speaks to me in different ways. I love the music, and I question whether I should. So there's a lot of emotion it evokes. Yeah. So it's hard to say Michael Jackson, but I love Michael Jackson. And Chris Martin to me is just like, yeah, it's just mood.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love Coldplay, but I think for me, I don't judge what I enjoy based on allegations and bad things. I mean, you could go through every band and find some reason you maybe shouldn't listen to them on an
And
ethical level,
artists,
but
all the great masterpieces that you look at in a museum, you can find something there too. I should probably also add though that Pink is whenever anything, whenever Pink is on, I just shut down because I just cannot believe she's so freaking talented as a
yeah,
songwriter, as a performer, as a vocalist. Same with Lady Gaga, you know?
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I saw Pink in New York City on a tour probably about 8 years ago, and I mean, she's just flying all around, not missing a beat, but I'm with you. Her lyrics just get me. They speak to me, but
Oh,
yeah, I love me some
and then
Pink. I'll
there's
put that on
Eminem.
the
Sorry, if we're talking like lyrics, there's Eminem, the poet. You know, I remember reading something about him probably 15 years ago that a lot of his creations were like when he was on the treadmill or working out. And I'm like, what? You come up with this stuff just like while you're working? I mean, it was just incredible because his syncopation and his lyrics are just I don't know where it comes from.
He's
I
a
don't know how.
genius.
Genius.
Yeah,
Genius.
so it's funny because I was literally listening to Houdini right before we went on, so I was getting my jam on with some Eminem.
I
Yeah,
love it.
my kids are
Um,
like, "Mom, can you turn that down before you drop me off at school?" You know?
oh my God. Are
I
you kidding
know.
me?
'Cause I'm, like,
Hey,
jamming
mom,
in the
turn it down.
look, I am jamming in, like, the driver's seat, and I'm like, "I don't care what your little 13-year-old friends think, they can go in school, I'm jamming. I'm way
You
cooler than
know,
them."
I have so frequently on the freeway, Def Leppard comes on and it is just up to 11.
Oh,
I
yeah.
photograph and yeah, they're just great, great songs. I love it.
Yeah.
Mind you, more often than not, when I get in the car, it's shut everything off. I need silence. But when a good song comes on,
Yeah, sounds like we do good on a road trip together. Well, that
amen.
yeah, no, I tell you, music is the like in my DNA. It's just, I remember being 3 years old, sitting on the floor listening to Dark Side of the Moon with my dad's huge headphones that came down to here. And they have pictures and little videos of me on the floor. And, so I just raised by hippies. It was just natural, that I grab
You're
his.
so lucky because, like, my parents were listening to, like, the Mills Brothers and,
Yeah.
and show tunes and stuff, so I didn't get that kind of an upbringing, but I'll tell you something, I this will be a subject for another podcast. I was in 3 different rock bands.
Well, yeah. We got to follow up on that in the future for sure. I
Yep.
was once, but then I woke up at 6 a.m. with my alarm, and here we are. But yeah, we got to
Actually,
hear
no,
about that. Um,
4. I said 3, 4.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
4
my
bands, yeah.
gosh.
Even during my
Okay.
broadcast career before I moved to New York, my last band was in Dallas, Texas, and I caught a ton of heat for it, which was ridiculous because that's an art and it's artistry, and, for anybody to suggest that a news anchor can't be sing in a rock band was just ridiculous, but that's the '90s.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we were all doing things in the 90s. Well, thank you so much for coming back on. I know my listeners absolutely loved the last episode we did. I hit record right out of the gate this time. We didn't have to do it 3 times. But remind us again when your podcast drops.
January 23rd, 6-part series on Peter Nygard, the prolific sex criminal. It's called Uncle Peter. My podcast, as it continues every week, is called Drop Dead Serious, but that series will drop. First 2 episodes will drop on day 1, and then an episode will drop every week after that. And then when it's all eaten up, then I'll be on live with guests and True Crime of the Week.
Amazing. Well, I'm subscribed with alerts. So that first episode, I'm going to know. I'm going to put the link in the description for all my listeners. Go subscribe now. Let's get ready. We'll talk about it in Patreon about each episode. And Ashleigh, I'm just so honored to have you on here. You're somebody I look up to. You do it right. You do it with heart and a focus on the victims. And you are a rock star in true crime and apparently in the 90s too. So
You're way too kind, and right back at you. It's why you're one of my favorite guests when we do our show on News Nation. I just adore you.
well, I'm grateful for you. And we will see you soon. Good luck with the launch of this podcast and can't wait. We will all be there.
Thanks, Gigi.
All right. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And who would have thunk it? Ashleigh Banfield rocking out in the 90s in all these different bands. Don't forget, go subscribe to Drop Dead Serious, which is debuting on January 23rd. The link is in the description here. Go give our girl a follow. We will see you soon.